Welcome to the International Souls Podcast. Here, we have valuable conversations with leading experts in their field. I'm your host, Eryck, and each week I sit down with people who dare to dream bigger, act braver, and build lives that inspire. You'll hear real stories, lessons learned, and expert insight from across industries and cultures, each one driven by purpose. This show is about leaving the good for the great, taking a leap of faith. Here we go. Okay, guys, super excited for today. Welcome to the International Souls Podcast. I'm your host, Eryck, and today I have the privilege to connect and share with a man who truly inspires me every single day. His name is Eduardo Castillo. Eduardo is a visionary artist, composer, father, and co-founder of Habitas, the global community and hospitality movement built around human connection, music, and shared experiences. Today, he continues to expand that mission through Wonderful, a collective dedicated to sustainable creativity, conscious living, and meaningful impact through art, design, and collaboration. Wonderful is not just a brand, it's a way of being, a reminder that beauty can meet responsibility, that action can align with intention. His art carries presence, intention, and depth, and somehow it became part of my daily life soundtrack. Eduardo, every time I play your music, I'm reminded to slow down, to breathe, and to reconnect. I still remember the first time I experienced one of your intimate shows in Tulum at Habitas. I think all of the financial result of that show was actually donated to a noble cause. And Dominique was in her last trimester, pregnant of Livia Rose. And that night, we both felt something beyond music, a moment of unity, love, and presence that we'll never forget. Eduardo's mission is to awaken some of that feelings in others, a sense of oneness and reverence to this planet we call home. And in this episode, guys, we'll explore how music, philosophy, and projects invite us to see the world differently, to experience what he calls the overview effect here on Earth. Eduardo Castillo, welcome to the show, my man.
My pleasure. Thank you. What a beautiful intro. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I meant every single word of that. And I'm very excited for you to be here. I know you travel a lot. You have a lot of projects. And I'm very, very, very excited. Dominique knows she's been seeing me all week, just like Wednesday, Eduardo. So
That's awesome.
listen, before I'm just curious to start, like before Eduardo, all the projects, all the brand that you are creating and experiences, who were you when music first called you in and you just decided like, wow, this is really it? Like, what was your earliest connection to sound and creativity?
Yeah, that's always a question I always love to ponder because I didn't grow up in a musical family. No musicians in my family. I grew up in a musical family in that my parents loved music. That for sure. I
Mm,
grew up in Venezuela. Where um, pop music was a thing. I grew up in the '80s, which was, I mean, that the joy and the liveliness and the playfulness of the '80s was sort of my foundation. Um, and to a certain point. And then I had a tragedy in the family. My father passed from a car accident when I was 15, and it sort of made a lot of the things that I sort of grew up with musically. And this is all, by the way, this is all retrospect. This is me. I didn't really understand that this was happening in the moment. I was just sort of being present to the moment. And now that I think about it, I look back, when I think about these questions and I try to piece of all the puzzles together. And that tragedy took me to a place of questioning all the joy and kind of the liveliness and the bubble gum world of pop music. Um and 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 right around that time I discovered what it feels like to sit at a piano on your own in a room with no distractions. And I was in a high school that had a really amazing music program and that I was involved with, but not really in the way that I did in that moment. In that moment, I would sit in a practice room. We had practice rooms with piano, This was in Caracas, Venezuela. This was in this was like 1990, 91. And I would sit in the piano room and just remember opening the lid of the piano. It was a stand-up piano, and opening the lid of the piano so that the room was filled with the sound. I had no idea how to play the piano, but I started playing around with the notes, and there's the white keys and the black keys, and I try to understand the relationship between the white keys and the black keys from what I heard and what felt right, and did a lot of imitating of a lot of pop songs just by ear, trying to replay them myself. But in that process, I fell deep into music that was really meaningful to me, whether it was things that I was creating on my own by accident, or songs that really like strong resonance with me, and that's when actually started considering music as a way of living. Again, I was 15, I was very young, and I wasn't really these words of a way of living are things that I know now, but in that moment, that's what it felt like, and how I wanted to exist in have music exist in my life, and myself exist in the realm of music. And because I was trying to figure out why the hell this injustice had happened,
Hmm.
why why if there was a God, why would a God be um so evil? Why would that God take away something that was so precious to me? And that sort of ignited this healing, I guess I could say, with music. Unaware, unaware. Give me 1 second. Let me just
Yeah, of
close the
course.
door real quick.
Sure.
Unaware of that was happening, but that's what was happening. Now I know. And that was the beginning of my real search for music. This is also the beginning of like me, understanding religion as I was growing up in the Catholic Church, and I would go to mass once in a while, to saying this is ridiculous. No offense to anybody who has a faith, but it was like, for me, it was like, this is so unfair. Like, what? Like, everything that I thought was real and true suddenly is shattered. I need to find what is my truth, and where I fit in. And so I kind of went on. I had an amazing professor at the time, incredible professor, who saw what was going on with me, as did many teachers. I was very lucky to be in a beautiful school, and they saw what I was going through, and gave me a lot of try to kind of help me with my path, and never imposing anything, but try to see if you can read this book, or listen to this, or and I was exposed to really incredible things at an early age. And suddenly this idea of existentialism was like my biggest curiosity. Like, why do we exist? What is the reason of it? Why do humans live on this earth, and time passes, and what is that? What is that does that a time amount to anything? Right? And I went
At
into
such
this.
a young age, you started.
I was 15 to 16. I was really obviously heartbroken, but really wanting to figure a lot of things out, like, as soon as possible, because I was like, this has to I have to figure this out. So I went through my high school years. I continued to perform. I was on stage a lot, and on theater, musicals, and there was this amazing thing in my school called Arts Night, which was where we auditioned in front of a panel of judges, which were just our teachers, and they decided who would perform on this Arts Night. And so I was always on Arts Night, and I was always on stage and performing, and music was a big thing for me. But then there was a moment where I had to decide what to do when I was graduating from high school. What was I to do to add to this tragic event with my father? Financially, we pretty much lost everything. And so, as it related to that tragedy, because it was just, we were so in shock, and just like, it was a perfect storm of many things. Caracas, Venezuela, was going through some crazy political stuff. It's like this perfect storm of like bad timing of everything, right?
Okay.
And I had to make a choice when I was ending my 17th year. I had to make a choice of what I wanted to do with my life. I really wanted to explore tourism, because I loved I love traveling in Venezuela. It's an incredible country, and I loved sharing that experience with as many people as I could. I would literally like be like, on a beach somewhere, and if I saw like a German couple or like someone obviously that weren't from Venezuela, blonde and like didn't speak the language, I would go up to them and say, because I spoke English, I would say, "How are you? Welcome to Venezuela," and I would suddenly turn into their host for, however long they accepted me. I really enjoyed. I was so proud of sharing Venezuela with the world.
Mm.
So I thought maybe this is what I want to do with my life. Maybe tourism is my world, and I looked into the possibilities of staying in Venezuela and studying tourism and having a career in tourism or whatever. But then I realized, no, music is everything to me. Like there's not even a comparison, right? Funny enough, by the end of this conversation, we'll see how it'll take a full circle. But it was for me, it was like, no, I need to pursue a life of music. And I sent out applications, cassette tapes at the time. I sent cassette tapes to a few universities and I got offers for scholarship. And that's what allowed me to leave Venezuela and study music. Um, so that would, I mean, I guess that was like my thrust into. That's a long story, and we I don't know how much time we have, but we, that's what finally made the decision of, okay, I'm going to study music and I'm going to actually build a career around music.
Oh, first of all, thanks for sharing that. I was very curious, and there's no rush, Eduardo. So,
Okay, cool,
honestly, yeah,
amazing.
share as much as
So
you
so I
wish.
yeah so I
Yeah, no,
so I
please.
so I got this amazing scholarship to this amazing school called Huntington College in Montgomery, Alabama. So
Okay,
random.
from
So
Venezuela
here
to
I am
Alabama.
from and at the moment I was like, what is a dark Latino? How is that going to work in Montgomery,
Yeah.
Alabama? It's like this is like the heart of the civil rights movement, right? Like I said, but the reason why I went there is because it was a small school and they had a really incredible music program, very incredible music program. And I did a little bit of research, and there was a professor in this school called Harold Rolig, a German composer who fled Nazi Germany to Montgomery, somehow ended up in Montgomery through some relationships of his, ends up in a church teaching music and directing the choir and the vocal program of this church. Tiny little church in the middle of Montgomery, Alabama, downtown Montgomery, Alabama. But he was like a almost like a descendant of Bach. Like this man was not only very religious, but he understood that music is sacred, and it was essentially a gift and a gift to God, as a thanks to worship and to incredible, right? And I'm not, I've never been religious, but I really appreciate and love ritual and tradition, right? And so I knew about this teacher, and I thought, wow, yes, I'm going to go to this school because I can't imagine what it must be like to be in the presence of this man. And I did, because I read about and very respected composer. And then when I went to that school, I studied music. I studied vocal performance and composition and philosophy and religion, because there was also very quickly I met a professor, Tom Salyer, his name was, who ran the philosophy and religion program of the school, and it was everything that I was questioning and wanting to understand.
Mm.
His existentialism program was expansive. His mythology program was expansive. And it was all sort of these tools that I was getting right after, I was still going through some hard times and trying to understand, my life. And he all suddenly, he had all these tools. And so I carried through this idea of music and philosophy, parallel educational careers and paths, because they fed each other for me. And yeah, eventually I left that school. Well, and I fell in love with it. My favorite human in the world is Martin Luther King Jr. as a result of spending time in Montgomery, Alabama. I was there for 4 semesters, 2 years, and just the work that he did. I went to so many of the places that he actually stood ground and said, in a, in what he was in his essence, like this has to change. And that really, really inspired me. Eventually the city became too small for me, and I needed a more metropolitan space. And I moved to Miami to study music and to continue sort of that path. In Miami is where I accidentally fell into a hospitality career, and we could talk about that whenever that comes up. But that's sort of that's the foundation of my music world.
Wow. So you started mostly self-taught and then eventually really started to understand more the whole from
Yeah,
composition and playing the
yeah,
instruments. And I'm curious to know
yeah.
because for a lot of people, music is entertainment and can be seen as just being entertainment. You go see a concert is entertainment. But from what I experienced to one of your really intimate shows and researching you as well, do you remember a specific time when you realized music can be more than entertainment, can actually be awakening or transforming people? Because that's what you're doing, you know. So I mean, that's what you're
Yeah,
giving to the world. So do you remember that point where it just went from one specific generic and then going to that other side?
I do. I had many moments of those actually. And by the way, I call those moments overview effect moments, because there's
Okay.
sort of moments where you can't, you like, you see something and you can't unsee it, right? And so
Mm,
my first moment was in New York. So I went to Miami for school,
yep.
built this accidental hospitality career, and started my first restaurant gig was amazing. I had no idea how to work in the restaurant. Didn't know how to serve tables, didn't know anything, but I went to an Italian restaurant that where I saw waiters singing happy birthday to the tables in quote unquote Italian operatic style. It was horrific. But I saw the opportunity. I went to the manager of the restaurant. I said, I don't know how to run, like, I don't know, I have no idea what the restaurant industry looks like and how I know how to eat at a restaurant. I don't know anything else, but I do know how to sing. And I'd love to maybe, is there a way that I can come and sing to your tables, maybe for some tips? I couldn't work legally because I was an international student. So I had to only work on campus. So I had to figure out a way to make some cash to make a living, right? And he took me into he's like, "Oh, really? You sing? Cool. Follow me." I follow him into the restaurant, into the kitchen at 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday night. His name was Tony. He takes me into the kitchen, takes a big pan and a big spatula and hits the pan really loud and tells the kitchen to stop what they're doing. In rush hour, they turn around and they're like, "What's happening?" And Tony says, "Eduardo's gonna sing to you. Eduardo, please." And I'm in the middle of the kitchen. People are looking at the chefs are looking at me like, "I this better be good or I'll kill you," right? Like. And I sing this tiny little 30-second aria, Italian aria, like full on tenor voice. And they're like, "Wow!" They clap. We walk out of the kitchen, and he's like, "Please come next week, and I'd love for you to sing to the tables." Eventually, that turned into me I would approach, weeks in, I would approach the tables that I was going to sing to, but they were all messy and there was dirty plates and glasses, and because somebody hadn't bussed the table and cleaned it up, and so I would clean the table because that was my stage, needed to be perfect. Tony noticed that, and he said, you are like, you can't just sing to the tables. Let me train you. Let me put you through some rigorous training because I want you to become like a server. And then I became a manager, and then I left that restaurant and managed many other restaurants in Miami. Then eventually ended up in South Beach at the height of like a time when South Beach was like, the most insane place on earth, which was like in the end 96, 97. And I started managing amazing restaurants in South Beach, very incredible chefs. Eventually ended up in New York through connections through the restaurant industry, and built this accidental career in hospitality. Moved to New
Really?
York, moved to New York, and then in New York, I built this lounge. That was my first gig in New York with somebody who had met me in Miami and said, "Come to New York. I have a job for you whenever you're ready." And I went, and she said, "What can we do with this wine cellar that I'm about to clear?" And I said, "Let's turn it into a really cool speakeasy lounge kind of thing." And she was like, "Let's do it." So we did it. And I would hire DJs to come in. And the curation part of music was what made me understand the first time how important it is for that curation to happen. It can't
Mm.
just be music, right? It can't just be like I would find DJs around the city and go to little bars and like find just amazing gems of DJs and invite them into this lounge to play, but knowing that I was not just offering whatever music was being played because it was being played. It was like guys that like they were selectors. They would play like vintage, like old salsa with like Miles Davis, and then the beginning of like the house classics back in the day, and like just really intelligent
Mm.
programming with music. And I realized the effect that had when I would go to other venues, and then when I would see, I realized, wow, like this curation and this sensibility of selecting music based on what, without sounding esoteric, but based on the energy of the room, is important. And I think that was the first time where I said, this this is crucial. And then I started DJing, and I started staying late nights. And when I would close the bar, I would just hang with my friends now that they were DJs, and I would play their records, and I learned how to DJ. That was vinyl back in the day. And then when I started buying music, I realized the effect that my DJ sets had as opposed to others. And again, music is extremely subjective. It does,
Mhm.
somebody might like somebody might prefer reggaeton than jazz, and that's okay, of course. But I realized like what felt right for me and how deep I could go with a musical journey from the get go when I started DJing back in the day. And and then eventually I left New York, moved to LA to leave hospitality and completely focus on music after 8 years in New York. And when I moved to LA, what I did was seek out venues, styles of music, things that I wanted to be part of. And I didn't find anything that I felt that it resonated with me. Probably because I was looking in the wrong places. I was looking at like dive bars and like play. I looked for all the music venues in LA, and it was mostly indie rock, and it was basically indie rock at the time was huge. Like the Strokes were like the biggest band in the moment, right? And so that was kind of the vibe in all these music venues in LA, which was like like rock and roll, blah, 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 which I love, but it was like okay, cool. Everybody left. That's it. Next, there wasn't any depth in what was happening. It was purely entertainment.
Mm.
That's not to say that the songs weren't written with heart and soul, but
Mhm.
it was just purely entertainment. And so here I was like, okay, I'm writing music now. I'm recording. Where do I perform? Where is my music gonna sit? And that's when I decided that I had to create my own ecosystem.
Mm.
And I found a really small loft music studio in LA, in downtown LA, that I turned into a music venue. I put in a beautiful sound system. I put in a beautiful DJ booth, and I created this concept called Voodoo that became my ecosystem and my sharing of music. It was 100-person invite only event that basically what it did was, how much is my rent and how much is the cost to put on this event for 100 people? I would divide it by 100, and that's how these things happened, right? And it became a really beautiful community in LA. Extremely beautiful, very
Mm.
supportive, extremely loyal. I brought in unbelievable artists from it caught on, and I had agents messaging me saying, listen, I have this big artist that's going to play a huge show, but he'd love to play your show as well,
Really?
which was like mind blowing to me because there was no way I could afford it. There was no way, but there was respect and there was love for it. So became incredible. I had then became good friends, but Damien Lazarus played, Nicholas
Mm.
Jar, like all
Mm.
these incredible artists that were rocking in the world, but they came into and it was incredible. And there was a local community of LA, other people also, other promoters that I collaborated with that were aligned with the vision of it, and it became a really really beautiful thing. That grew into more intentional settings for music. And there I 100% was very clear on music was not could not just exist for entertainment purposes. There had to be a sense of community. There had to be a sense of belonging. Um, and that's how it started basically.
Wow. Super inspiring. So you basically create like just trailblaze and were seeking it, but then said, yeah, I'm gonna do it myself. And step by step just created that. So from if I'm looking at the journey, which is I love it. So from Miami, then New York. So really following like the big metropolitan in the US. Now you're arriving, let's say, at the end of your chapter in LA. Was that when? Because I'm very curious of how Habitas
Yeah,
was created. Was that so? All the like management and restaurant, hospitality, music. Was that when clicked, or actually what happened? Like, what was the seed
yeah,
for Habitas? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I love sharing this story because
Oh man, let's
it
go.
it's just a yeah, it makes me so happy. It kind of validates this idea, um, that and it reminds me of many times when my grandfather used to tell me, give me advice, and he was a very special person in my life. And and it kind of just you rethink of those moments of that advice from an elder, basically, and you realize, wow, I mean, you don't know it in the moment, but then it actually comes to fruition. But all these things were seemingly accidental, but they weren't, right?
Hmm.
They were seemingly arbitrary, and it was always organic, but there was one underlying thing, which came back to that decision of, if I don't pursue a life of music, which is clearly my purpose, um, I, w- I, I won't fulfill it won't be a fulfilling life. And music has been the thread of every single decision I've made in my life. When Voodoo starts getting big and becomes a very well known brand in LA, um, I decide to open a bar in downtown LA. I found that I meet another Venezuelan who became a dear friend. Together, we built this bar in downtown LA, and it became kind of like a important music space for LA. Um, Simultaneously, while that's happening, I also have a warehouse in downtown LA that I eventually grabbed, 10,000 square feet, and I turned it into this like oasis with, I put trees inside of it. I fill it with Moroccan rugs and like in an amazing sound system. I become very good friends with a dear brother named George who owns a substantial sound company, who does incredible festivals in Australia. He's Australian, does incredible festivals all over the world. He's flown all over the world to fine tune DJ systems and sound systems of clubs, the best clubs in the world.
Mm.
He's a legend. We become very good friends through my connections in New York and through my life in New York. We become very good friends. And one day we're talking, and I say, I have this warehouse, and I'd love to have an amazing sound system in there. And he says, why don't we set up an install with my sound? We kill two birds with one stone. You store it, but you use it.
Mm. Yes.
And suddenly I have a state of the art sound system in this warehouse. As then that becomes Voodoo's next home after many homes. We went through like 4 iterations. This warehouse becomes that place, and it's incredible. I'll show you. I'll send
Would
some
love to.
videos of it so I can show
Yeah.
you. Yeah. So that becomes the home for Voodoo, and it also then becomes this like next stage of what I want to do in terms of production and experiences. Somebody during that time tells me that I need to meet this guy who is building incredible structures or like beautiful tents and beautiful things that I wanted to start creating and start to get into, because I wanted to kind of bring Voodoo into the outdoor world, into like, on grass lawns or wherever. At the time as well, I was curating every Sunday for the summer of this park in LA, in downtown LA, called Grand Park. I was working with the city of LA to curate and produce this beautiful 20,000, 25,000 person event every Sunday.
Whoa.
And not every Sunday, it was one Sunday a month in the summer. It was huge, huge success. It was called Grand Park Sessions. So all these things that are starting to happen and move outdoors, I have people telling me, you need to meet this guy who's doing really cool things. And I think you guys are going to get along. Friends of his are telling him, you need to meet this guy who's doing really cool things. I think you guys need to meet. I think you get along. Eventually, that connection happens, and that's Kafir. Kafir Levy. He's my business partner and dear friend. We met, and within 30 minutes, we set a date. We said, we have to do something. Let's set a date. Let's make this happen. Right.
30
And
minutes.
30 minutes. I mean, it was
You
like
just
an
knew.
immediate connection, values aligned, time in our life aligned. We had been going to Burning Man, both of us, and he had been building camps. I had been going to Burning Man. So it was like this whole, like, wow, like you came into my life precisely at the time that you needed to, and vice versa. Within 30 minutes, we said, okay, let's set our goals. I was planning a trip. I was planning an event for Halloween, and we said, okay, let's turn this into my Halloween event, or let's just transfer what I was thinking of doing for Halloween and turn this into a new project together. And then we put that aside, and we spent the next 2 hours talking about life and just like, getting to know each other, forgetting about the fact that we had just decided that our future together was going to happen in in that Halloween. So we went to Burning Man. We did this whole thing. It was a crazy story. We meet and we go to Burning Man. It's like, okay, cool. See you after Burning Man. Perfect. See you after Burning Man. We had no idea where we would be at Burning Man. There's 70,000 people at Burning Man. We knew that we were going to meet after Burning Man to kind of plan this Halloween trip. 3 days into Burning Man, in the middle of the night, someone knocks on my door. I was in an RV in the middle of Burning Man. Someone knocks on my door. I open the door. It's Kafir. And I'm like, I don't remember telling you where I was. And Kafir's like white. His face is white. And he's like, I had no idea where you were. I just got a flat tire. You're the first door I knocked.
No.
So talk about like
Yeah.
fucking being like
Yeah.
this is the universe telling you that this is going to happen and it's going to be special. Just the two of you meeting is going to be special. And we couldn't believe it. We spent the rest of Burning Man kind of hanging out together, and we were like, we built more of a relationship at that Burning Man. We go back and we're like, let's fucking like this. Let's do this. Let's do this. To this day, I get goosebumps thinking of the probabilities of that happening at Burning Man. Although Burning Man does have that magic, but it's like, it was unbelievable. So we set out to build this new thing that wasn't called Habitas yet. At the moment, it was called Gypset. I don't know if you're familiar with these Gypset books that are out there. There's an amazing author and photographer, Julia Chaplin. She created this book and this concept called Gypset, which was gypsy and jet setter together. And it's kind of like this, like, what today is kind of like this nomadic, this digital nomad that has resources to travel all over the world, and and is bohemian, and is barefoot, and these sort of things. She put it all together, and she went around the world photographing these gypset moments. And I was like, this is my language. This is the evolution of what I want to do. This is how I want to be in the world. I want to be in Ibiza, and so I called it Gypset. The first event happened, and it was sold out. It was incredible. It was a 24-hour event that we did. Started at 5 p.m. and ended at 5 p.m. the next day. It was yoga. It was amazing food. It was incredible music. It was on this beautiful ranch just outside of LA. And there's even a picture and a little video of us that our videographer caught the next day, like when we were closing the day. It was sunset set. I played a sunset set. Everyone was crying, and like everyone hugging, like what just happened these last 24 hours. And him and I hugged, and there's an amazing video of us hugging where it's like you can see that we're like, we did it. Like, this is it. This is it. That became Habitas. That was the foundation for Habitas, which eventually turned into Habitas because Julia, the author of the books, reached out to me and said, "Hey, this thing is catching on, and now it's creating some confusion.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to address it because I've created this trademark." And my response to her was like, "Julia, I'm such a fan. I would change the name immediately. Like, that's not an
Yeah.
issue at all. What I want to do is actually support what you're doing, not take away from it."
Mm.
So Immediately, I started thinking of another name, so we came up with Habitas, and that turned into Habitas. So Habitas turned into this retreat experience, no longer than 4 days, that happened for a couple of years. We had a couple of moments that we were able to actually put it out into the world, and every time it was a huge success. We weren't thinking of a business. We weren't thinking of like, how do we make money off of this? We were barely breaking even because they were so expensive. The production was very expensive, and we weren't really charging too much money so that it was accessible and so that we can build that community. And we weren't really thinking of a model. Eventually, I ran into a friend of mine who said, Burning Man, and he said, I'm opening a new hotel in Tulum. I'm watching what you're doing with Habitas. Why don't we create one of those experiences at my new hotel? Why don't we launch the hotel with Habitas, right? And I said, cool, let me think about it. Let me come down and see it. And I went to Tulum. We saw, Kavir and I went to Tulum. We saw it. We fell in love with it. It was Nomade. It was the
Mm-hmm.
opening of Nomade. Sebastian, the owner of B Tulum and Nomade, uh, I had I had done things with B Tulum in the past, and then suddenly he was like, let's do something in Nomade. We launched Nomade. The first week of Nomade was a huge success. It was an entire week, close to the public, private event. You couldn't come in and out. It was like you were locked into Nomade for a week, and it was incredible. Beautiful programming, incredible experience. At that experience, a friend of mine invited his uncle who owns Papaya Playa. Remember Papaya Playa?
Yeah.
And he had a piece of land that was empty next to Papaya, and he said, "Why don't you guys do this next year in my land?" And we said yes. And come a year later, we start selling the event. The event sells very quickly. We set up a waiting list just to have no one drops off the any ticket sales. So we decide to open another week from the waiting list. The waiting list fills up again. We decide to open up a third week. The waiting list fills up again. And suddenly we're faced with this idea of like, one, don't necessarily have to go back to LA. Two, we're in the height of the beauty of what Tulum is. Like that was
Mm-hmm.
2016. It was absolutely perfection. And the owner of the land was like, you guys don't have to go anywhere. Like as long as you want, you can stay. So suddenly we have this like revolving door of what are going to be guests. We weren't even close to. This was before we even started building what was supposed to be a camp. Very simple, 1 week done. We pack everything and we go. We decided that we would have to design more permanent structures, and that's where Kafir came in, and he's the man for all that stuff, and kind of like thinking of like structures and the logistics behind everything. And while he's thinking of that, I'm thinking, how do I program this and how do I create this experience? Eventually, that became Habitas Hotel. It became Habitas Tulum, and it accidentally became a hotel. Accidentally, not accidentally, and it was a huge success. We paid our investment back within months. It was the height of like the beauty of Tulum, where everybody was there. It was incredible. Um, that then turned into Habitas, the company. Since then, since I left the company, we had 14 hotels built all over the world.
Wow. Let me just let me just soak that all in. Incredible. I was so curious of how this all came along. And it this isn't so you're in 2016. Do you for those who are curious, like I'm very curious, what's like a program? Like you keep on saying programming. So what
Mhm.
was a program, let's say a day in a life at Habitats, what would that look like?
It started with your arrival. That was a very, very important thing. We quickly understood that hospitality is less about hospitality and more about impact, because
Mm,
you have suddenly somebody that says, I live in New York, right? And I say, I need a week off. I need 4 days off. And I decide I want to go to Tulum. And I'm going to bring my best self to Tulum because I'm putting away all the stresses of the city. I'm putting them aside. I'm arriving in Tulum. And for us to arrive to our hotel with a simple, very nice, may I see your passport, please? Let me show you around the hotel. That wasn't enough because you are missing an opportunity there. The opportunity in that moment was to remind that person of why you chose to leave your stressful life and why you chose Tulum, why you chose Habitas, and why and how do you want to exist in this ecosystem, in this space for the days that you're going to be there. And we wouldn't let them, it wasn't like, think about it. It was more like, we're gonna leave you here with a whole copal ceremony. We had copal is this beautiful resin, like,
Hmm.
as you know,
It just brings me back to
and
Tulum, that smell. Yeah.
exactly. And the ritual of this, it's the resin. For those who don't know what this is, it's a resin
Yeah.
that comes off of a tree that you place on coal. I later learned that this is a tradition in many cultures in many parts of the world. You drip it, and and smoke comes out. But for us, this ritual of copal, we would have our guests sit at this beautiful table at a beautiful sort of, for the lack of a better word, altar, and we would have them place an intention of why they were there and have them drip this resin onto the coal to then see it turn to smoke and visualize that intention moving up into the atmosphere and sort of
Hmm.
encompassing why you were there. That was the beginning of your stay at Habitas, and that set the that set everything in motion for everyone in the space, which were all our amazing and beautiful humans that worked at Habitas. That that's the kind of human that we gave them, that we
Mm.
handed to them. And it was very easy for them to build these connections with all our guests because they were their hearts were open, you know what I mean, immediately. And there were times where people would cry in that welcome ceremony, in that welcome ritual, because they had the opportunity to really think about it, which we don't offer ourselves ever. We don't grant ourselves the opportunity to think about why it is that we make these choices and to be fully present to them. So that was the beginning of the experience. And from then on, as you can imagine, all the touch points revolved
Mm.
around why we were there and the purpose behind it.
Super intentional. I really like that. And I feel like Tulum is a space where you can really set that intention. From different places I have lived, Tulum is always very, very special for me, and a lot of people were just very intentional. I think the space, just where we are, just just exponential, like just brings that all to life. And I'm curious, like in a personal level, Eduardo, what did you learn about that specific chapter in terms of community, leadership, and purpose personally for you to become like that leader and also bring that community, like all everything that you've learned from that? Is there like any specific point that just you can bring now as tools in your next chapter with Wonderful, with your next endeavor?
I don't I don't know that there's an identifier of I just know that things in community feel better. I mean, it's almost like just instinctual and just a feeling. The intention always with Habitas was to have a very profound connection with nature and to have a profound connection with everyone around you. So at Habitas, we would have, if you remember, I mean, we had very little like very few tables that only sat 2 or 4 people. It was
Mm-hmm.
more about picnic tables where you were forced to engage with other guests. That was always we didn't want anybody to sit in their rooms ever. Like everyone, my goal as creating these experiences were to pull people from the rooms and have them butt heads and connect. Butt heads not the right word, but connect and rub shoulders, right? And so for me, that had to happen. You know, in my concerts, I have moments where I ask people to turn to their left and turn to their right and hug the person next to you, whether they're a stranger or not. And what I see happen in those moments is extremely powerful. There's a sense of belonging. A sense of belonging is one of the most important things that is lost in humanity
Mm.
and is needed for truly for our survival.
Mm.
Um, especially in the world that we live in now, is a sense of belonging, a sense of place, a sense of community. And these were all just vehicles for that. And it wasn't necessarily something that was like, this is the strategy or this is the formula. It's just how it felt, and it felt good,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Wow.
had to happen over and over again.
I love that. If we fast forward a little bit, and because it seemed like you were such in a nice and a good place in your life, and in this like building community, building brand, having that impact, you were also participating, like giving your shows there, right? Like your experiences, your music. What led to a transition? What was like, okay, this is kind of the end of this chapter. It's time to move on. Did something spark the expansion to now 14 hotels? You said. I'm curious to know, like, for me, that's a perfect example of leaving the good for the great and taking a leap of faith. Can you share with us that
Yeah,
story?
that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's exactly what it was.
Was it?
But it I don't know that it was I don't know that if it didn't feel like I was leaving the good. It felt
Okay.
like I was leaving it felt like I was leaving the changed,
Hmm.
the metamorphosis of something that I didn't necessarily drive me or didn't necessarily inspire me anymore. And that is the founder's plight of so many founders and entrepreneurs that build something that is their baby and live and breathe the essence of what that is, becomes a successful business, and suddenly there's a lot of other forces that pull.
Mm,
And those other forces that pull, sadly, the one thing my greatest learning in that process was the understanding of the importance of, if you are a creator of something that is an extension of yourself, no one can govern it. No one can govern it. Governance is everything. I was a baby. I wasn't a baby. That was only 10 years ago, but I was naive and trusting to the fact that even if other people came on board, they were my people, and they were people that understood this wholeheartedly and would never ever let that go. That wasn't the case. Um, it became a very successful business, and it became a massive canvas filled with dollar signs, and that became the focus. Somehow, still trying to preserve its essence, but for my taste, it moved too fast. For my taste, it moved misaligned. Um, and there was a moment where it had to stop for me and for Kafir. We both left the company relatively at the same time. And we left the company because we realized that life's too short. And if we could create it once, we could jump into the greater, as you say, from
mm,
good to greater. We can jump into the greater just as easy, even better. Right. And we did, and we did that. And so Habitas continues to be this beautiful, thriving company. But if you go to an Habitas pre Eduardo and Kafir, and you go to an Habitas now, it's inevitable that there's a shift, um, for better or for worse. Depends on what
mm,
you look at, and depends on how you see it.
can we talk a little bit business? Because we've been talking a lot
Of
about
course,
creativity, artistry. I mean, behind everything that you created, well, I mean, I don't want to say everything, but most of the biggest chapter, there's a business behind that. And as much as like in a business, you need structure, you need people involved, you need. I'm just curious. Could you share like what was when you brought people around it? So you guys hired like a CEO, CMO. You started like having all these like external investors. Can you share a bit about how that structure was, and then
yes, of course, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So very early on, we brought in a, an old friend of mine, who had supported Habitas in that first event in Tulum with at Nomade at the hotel. And when we moved to the second event in Tulum the following year, it made sense for him to continue that involvement. That's when he brought in someone else, and that person became our CEO.
Okay.
And he came from a startup, build, create valuation, sell, exit, next kind of
Okay.
thing. That sort of mentality that I absolutely like abhor. That
Really?
mentality is just not, it's not my thing. I don't ever want to do anything with the idea of me leaving it. That's like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
What
What's the,
what what about your partner Kafir? Did he had a bit of that
also
mentality or?
same as me.
Okay.
We were completely aligned in that sense, and we still are. Wonderful. It doesn't have an exit plan. Wonderful is a life project, and
Yeah,
that's what it should be always.
I see.
And that's what Habitas was supposed to be. It was supposed to be our life project. Now we realize this was just a stepping stone to
Yeah.
what the life project is. We needed those learnings. So a
Yeah.
CEO came on board.
Okay.
Our offices were in New York.
Okay.
All the different executives, CMO, CFO, all these different executives came in. Eventually, we had our third hotel was in Saudi Arabia, which was insane. It was
The third
just at
hotel.
the third hotel was in Saudi Arabia,
Okay.
and it happened. And it happened. We got the invitation to make this happen in Saudi Arabia in March of 2020,
Mm.
literally
Right.
at global lockdown during COVID, where when we thought that our business was over
Really?
and hospitality had ended and we might be the end of the world. You remember that?
Well, I'm apparently Tulum was thriving during 2020, but
Yeah, it was ridiculous what happened in Tulum. But
yeah,
before that thriving happened,
yeah,
and we were lucky and blessed to be in a place like Tulum early on in COVID. Early on in COVID was a lot more control. Lockdown was lockdown. People stayed home, et cetera, et cetera. But it wasn't as grave as anywhere else because people went home and they went to their towns and they got COVID, but it was like they drank tea and they sweated it out and they went into a temazcal and like they deal with this stuff all the time, right? There's dengue, there's all these like it happens. No one was freaking out about COVID per se, only that they didn't have an income and they didn't have a livelihood. That was really the troubling part. So we thought that hospitality that might be it. Like what's going to happen? Everybody thought
yeah.
that they're unless you were a doctor, you were like, oh shit, what's going to happen, right? Suddenly we get this call and we were invited to build a hotel in Saudi Arabia in the Arabian desert at a ridiculous source of funding. It was insane. So while that happened, that's a crazy story in and of itself, and of how that was built during COVID. How we built the hotel in Mexico, and how we were shipping containers to Saudi Arabia to build this hotel and assemble it there, with no one ever understanding how they were supposed to build it. But how the hell do we get there, and what flight routes should we take? How do we cross airports and borders? It was insane. That's a long story, but it's an incredible story for another podcast. But so eventually, Saudi Arabia happens. It's a huge success. Alula, or Habitas Alula, is a huge success regionally, and even the stories and the intricacies of cultural intricacies that happen in the idiosyncrasies that happen between the Saudi world and us was really interesting because they said, we want your hospitality to be part of our 2030 vision. There's this crazy 2030 vision in Saudi Arabia, right? Of
Yeah.
how they see the world by 2030. Our hospitality was part of that 2030 vision.
Have they
And
experienced it before? Like just have they experienced it before? They saw it
only
online.
the only the brand, not
Okay.
directly. We were dealing with very, very high position people in Saudi government.
Okay.
They had never experienced it, but they had friends and family that had experienced it, and the brand was, beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful brand.
Yeah.
And so, and it's a beautiful brand that was authentic, and that's what they
Mm-hmm.
were like. we need this. We need this authenticity. And I was completely opposed to it. I was like, there's no way we're going to Saudi Arabia. That's
Really?
crazy. Like
That was your
yeah,
first instinct? Hmm.
personally, my experience with Saudis was in hospitality in New York at the height of my hospitality career, and it wasn't pleasant. It was
Okay.
like, I can buy this restaurant, I decide what happens in this restaurant kind of thing,
Okay.
right? There's a lot
Okay.
of entitlement there. I have amazing Saudi friends, but I guess there's that side of every culture.
Mm-hmm.
But at that level of wealth, it's really prevalent, right? And so it's particularly outside of Saudi. Finally, I'm convinced to go to Saudi, and I go to Saudi and I fall in love with Saudi Arabia, and I fall in love with its people, because there is entitlement in every culture, but there was something really special and very innocent about the Saudi people when I
Was
went
it
there.
was it your first time?
First time ever, yeah.
So you had like a
Eh,
misconception with your New York,
I had a misconception
well, a
because of
little bit.
hospitality.
And New
Yeah, I had a
York, yeah.
misconception with my experience in hospitality in New York of these like
Yeah.
very, very wealthy, Saudis
Yeah.
coming in and wanting to call the shots. And it was like, no,
Yeah.
we don't do that here. And they were like, what do you mean? Like, take my card, I buy everything. And it was like,
Yeah.
no, so sort of thing. That was my experience. And it happened often in New York because I was running like very high end places, and it wasn't comfortable. But when I arrived to Saudi, I fall in love with the country, and I fall in love with its people, and I see the other side of it, which is incredibly beautiful, and realized that we were asked to be part of history in that country.
Really?
And we were when we realized the impact of it, and we said yes. We're like, let's do it. And our CEO was all on was like basically was the one that convinced us, like, guys, this like has to happen. He saw it more from a strategic point of view, a business point of view. We saw it more from a philosophical point of view. But we agreed to it, and it was amazing, and that's what kept us afloat during COVID. Incredible. But that
Really?
sort of changed that changed the dynamic of what going from like these two small hotels that were like really experientially driven to suddenly moving into a crazy level of luxury, right? Our version of luxury, but it still was. Now suddenly we were thrusted into the traditional sense of luxury, even though we influenced it, because our luxury is simply being barefoot and sitting on the beach, and and in the jungle, and like experiencing the ocean and a beautiful sunrise. That's luxury.
Mm.
But suddenly we were fusing these two worlds of luxury, and it started changing the dynamic. That
Mm.
became expansion, expansion, expansion. Because if we could do it during COVID in the middle of the Arabian desert, we can do anything. So and there was funding, and so it became this almost like turnstile of expansion of new hotels. And in my belief, and I see that as this is a fact. It's like, and I can debate this with anybody. When you're working a company and building a company that is all about human connection and human interaction, you can't rush it. It can't be like expansion can happen, but it needs to take its time, because each location has to have that foundation before you can focus on the next. Um, and that's just a reality of like, that's physics almost. It's almost like, it's a law of it's like relativity. It's like, this is how it is. When you're in business and when you're thinking numbers, and when you see things and believe things that aren't really true, but they seem to be true because the numbers make sense.
Mm.
And again, for better or for worse, the company is thriving, and it's doing well. But it's not what I hoped for. For me personally, in terms of like my involvement with it, because it was
Mm.
our baby.
Did you so you sold like your share, or like that's how that's what
No,
happened, or
I'm still a shareholder.
okay.
Kafir and I are both still shareholders.
Okay.
And and we do everything we can to support the company and make sure that it thrives.
Okay.
But our involvement wasn't I realized that my involvement as a creative director of the company and the curator of what happens in these spaces were less important than actually selling rooms because it turned into a real business. It turned into a very significant business. So when I realized that, I said I only want to exist in a place where what I can offer is paramount to what is happening in that ecosystem, in that space. Like it's what's the point? I don't want to just have a job. I want to be influential, and I want to think of legacy, and I want to think of how much impact my life can have on this planet, not how much money I can make. That's never been my driver ever. And so that's why I left the company. Basically, it's like it wasn't really about, I could have stayed, and it could, and but it just didn't feel right anymore.
Did that
Um,
set you up financially for your next project though? Did it like help with that part or not? Did it
I mean,
matter?
yeah, yeah, it didn't matter. That wasn't really, it wasn't like, okay, that wasn't an exit. It wasn't like really like, okay, I'm like just going to have my exit. And like, that wasn't, it didn't really matter. It
Mm,
wasn't like, okay, now I have all this money to go somewhere else. It didn't really matter. That's never been my driver.
really?
I've never been interested in it. I love a good life, and I love to have the freedom to do what I want to do. I see money as that. Money is an exchange for freedom, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
sometimes I have a dilemma. Sometimes I have a dilemma about that concept of like, this idea of the fisherman, right? That the story of the fisherman who is someone comes to him and says, "Hey, I can show you how to build more boats, and like, we can
Mm-hmm.
expand." And he's like, "And this is what you'll have." And then the fisherman at the end of the story says, "But I already had that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't need to retire from something that I already had from the get go." And that's
Mm.
sort of always been my mentality. And I think it comes from that tragic moment early on where we had resources and suddenly we didn't. I had to fend for myself. I had to figure things out. And so things have come in and out of my life that are materialistic, that really have very little meaning. But what's always had a lot of meaning is my integrity, and like what I mean in the world, and how I exist in the world.
Wow.
That's really ultimately the driver.
That's incredible, man. It's really refreshing, honestly, to hear that side. Well, not just of the story, but that side of, because I feel like a lot of people who would love to open a hotel, your story is like a pure success story of expansion, bigger, everywhere, global, and you're like, nah, it doesn't resonate with me anymore. And you're the one who found it. So I love how that core value of integrity is just so strong in you, and like no matter what, you're just gonna believe that, believe in yourself and believe like in that value, and knowing when, okay, well, that's enough. Just like the fisherman, that's enough for me. And that kind of really brings us to your next era, like your new era of Eduardo Castillo, with all these past experiences, and now creating wonderful with the same business partner that you founded, Habitas, which is kefir. Can we know, because I've been researching, can we know like what's wonderful about, what's the mission, and where you at in that process?
Yeah, of course. The cool thing
Amazing.
about this sort of 2 years of leaving Habitas and starting to really kind of think about conceptually what wonderful is, it's granted me an unbelievable amount of time for music, which has been really incredible. And that's also where the overview effect has come in, and kind of me wanting to focus more on what is my experience, like what's the 3.0 experience of my music sharing in the world. These 2 years have allowed me to have given me license to do that, and it's been incredible.
Wow.
And at the same time, I met an amazing partner, Roberta. I don't know. I think you've met her, no? Or maybe not.
I don't think so.
Roberta's come into my life, and we sort of have envisioned, this like, what does a world look like with this understanding that music is actually and ultimately my greatest tool for impact
Like a love partner, you
outside of
mean?
hustle.
Like a
Yeah, yeah,
love
yeah, yeah,
partner?
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Roberta.
Okay.
And she's, we're sort of fully aligned, and she's become my manager, and she's become my agent. And it's like,
Really?
it's like this opportunity to have we have these incredible moments of partnership of loving partnership where we explore, a relationship and how we are as humans, very, very, very like transparent and vulnerable. And it's been incredible these last 2 years to see how that affects the professional world and how we exist in that world. She's a very talented jeweler as well. She has a beautiful jewelry line. And so we're sort of supporting each other in these paths of our creativity. It's really been incredible and has kind of put everything into a more clearer picture, even with Wonderful. And with Wonderful, basically, Sophia and I, when we left Habitas, we were like, okay, next is continue that's wonderful life that we built for ourselves, right?
Mm,
And Wonderful is the evolution of hospitality for us because we absolutely adore hospitality in as an amenity to our lives, but also as more importantly, an impact platform. It's incredible. What I was saying before, as that person shows up as their best self, they leave, hopefully, a changed human. And either they're a changed human because they just never even, how many times at the hotel, I set up these totems with sunscreen from a company of a friend of mine, and there was this sign that would talk about why this is the sunscreen that you should wear. Not that specific sunscreen, but why you should wear organic, anything organic on your skin. What that means to the second largest coral reef in the world, which was right in front of Tulum, the
mhm,
Mesoamerican Reef, after the Great Barrier Reef. Like having that in front of you and like putting on garbage Hawaiian tropic and
mhm,
jumping in the water is a criminal offense, right? It period. But that's one side. But the side of your organism and your body, this temple of you putting it is just not okay. How many times somebody left the hotel just with that example saying, I will never,
mm,
ever purchase anything that hurts my body from that moment of like, oh wow, does anybody have sunscreen? Oh wow, look, they have a dispenser. Then I read about it and it's like, oh my God. Number one, I didn't know this was the second largest reef in the world. Number two, I didn't realize how unbelievably impactful this could be towards that ecosystem, et cetera, right? Many examples of that in hospitality if you do it right. And so our next step with hospitality and with Wonderful is how we can actually take that to the next level. And how we think we can take that to the next level is not where people visit and travel to, but where people live. And so
hmm,
Wonderful is moving into this idea of redefining what residential development is. If I had to talk to an investor and they asked us, what are you guys doing? And they didn't really know, they didn't understand philosophy so much, but more, let's get to business. I would say we're developers, but we're not going to build a golf course, right? We're going to build a cultural center with a longevity center and eventually a school with all these incredible tools for human knowledge to prepare ourselves for the future, to be in the present, and
mm,
to be inspired to be the best that you can be. That's what our anchor is instead of a golf course,
mm.
instead of a country club. So that's where Wonderful is moving into.
Wow. I love it. I absolutely love the mission. Is there I don't know, like, where are you in the process? Is there like a shovel in the ground, or you're still planning, which it's going to take us? You said earlier, like everything that has that human connection aspect will take as much time as needed. Where are you in this process right now?
We are in the process of design of our first location, which we're hoping is in Baja, which Kafir and I absolutely love Baja.
Mm,
It's a very, very special place in the world, Baja, Mexico.
mm,
So we're hoping that would be the first project, but there's a lot of others that are now that we're moving into this world of development. What what we didn't realize is that you kind of have to cast a net in projects
mm,
and it starts popping like popcorn kind of thing. you don't know, like you think you know the timing, you could create timelines and pipelines, but these things all have their contingencies and sort of their own ways of evolving as a progression of events, that we have a bunch of different projects and ideas and conceptual projects in different places of the world, and we're just starting to see them kind of sprout, and whatever hits first is our first project, and so on and so forth. But
Mm,
like I said, it will at the right timing, at the right moment, just nurturing it and seeing it sprout.
amazing. I'm super curious and excited to see this grow. I've been following the page. I have a few more questions for you, Eduardo, and then we'll transition to a few rapid questions. The rapid question at the end, but something that is really important for me is health, wellness, your routine, what you do to show up for yourself every day, to be that light, to be that best self to the world. How health and wellness, fitness, yoga, meditation has brought the best of your life? If so, and the second question would be, what is your like current, what do you do currently to take care of yourself, to show up your best, if there's anything that you're doing? Yeah.
There, for sure, there is, and my food is the
Yeah.
most important thing.
Okay.
That was a very very serious realization when, particularly when I moved to Tulum, where I had access to our amazing chefs, and we only worked with the best ingredients, and I realized how amazing I felt. Number one, number two, um, respecting really what is put into this absolute miracle of what we have, right? Our bodies. It's mind blowing, and like all the synchronizations that happen within the body. I've amazing functional medicine doctor friends,
Mm,
and the learnings, and now we have so much access to information. It's just mind blowing that we could ever alter in a negative way our body, right? Just from
mm,
simple ignorance, really, at most of the time. That's one.
not true.
Number two is being as close to nature as possible. That number three is being extremely creative, putting myself in situations where creativity thrives, because I really believe that creativity is, if every human was creative in the world, this would be a different, a better place. And I'm not saying that not everybody has to be musicians or artists or painters or filmmakers. Or creativity comes in very very different forms.
Mm,
And I think everyone has the potential to be creative. You just have to find that source of creativity. It's just super important. Um, and you and I have a very important conversation outside of this podcast, which is fitness, because you, my man, are a statue. And that's a part of me that I've always wanted to like really get to, is to have a routine that's that makes me feel creative while I'm actually physically shaping my body. It's always something that's a dream of mine. So that's another conversation we'll have, and at some
I would
point.
love to have that. Yeah. I'm here for it. So if you would love to talk about that on a call, we'd love to be there. And I appreciate that. I've put in the work since for me, this like the key is consistency. And for those who know me around me for years, I'm like the only person who never stopped, not never stop, but just always prioritize it. And it just manifests itself eventually, and I
That's a
just like,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
That.
Well, just
Sorry, I didn't mean
go
to
ahead.
interrupt,
No,
but
yeah,
yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt.
go ahead.
That's a beautiful thing to be aware of consistency, and
Yeah,
that whether and how, but how that manifests into your physical state is incredible, because it's so visceral. Like it's right there for you, and philosophically, that idea is not just, it's not an aesthetic thing. It's not like, how do I look in this clothes, or how do I look in the mirror, or how do I look to others. It's really about like action that has a result, right? Like, and within yourself. It's incredible. I
yeah.
admire so much that idea of being consistent with yourself. And I used to think of it as like, yeah, no, I don't hate gyms. I'm not going to go to a gym. But there, for those who really see the kind of the beauty and the depth of a physical consistency in your body, it's incredible.
Yeah,
I
you know,
admire it.
well, I totally agree. And you know what? I think you have to anchor your why you do it so it makes sense every single day that you work out. But it also has to come. You mentioned earlier, like you never went in business to make money. I've never trained to look a certain type of way. It really just, my body just started to, become look on how it looks. And honestly, I really look like I am physically right now than on the opposite side. It makes me feel good, look good, and I just show up the best self with myself, with my family, the people around me, and all the different layers from my community to my peers to giving back. It all shows up, and eventually, for me, it becomes an inspiring way of uh, just being around people who are always looking up for themselves and arriving prime and ready to go whatever we're doing. I think that's very inspiring. And the new people, like all the new people that are coming in my life, we have that similar value, which is very important. And kind of brings me to one of our last question about fatherhood, because you're a father, you have a daughter, and how like, and we talked a little bit, we're not going to go too deep with the family, but I'm just curious, like how did fatherhood really shifted your perspective on life, art, and meaning, like of success in your own life?
It's the most profound experience that more than any other experience. I mean, there was the death of my father and the birth of my daughter. Um, you know, there, my daughter is at another level because basically everything I do, one is to make sure that she understands that she has a reference. One day she'll have a reference to whom her father was and how she maybe should conduct and see the world. As a hint, she will have her own personality, she will have her own outlook, but it's sort of a I've seen this in fathers that I've admired, and in their path and their way of of integrity, of incorruptibility. And those are very, very powerful values that have to be passed on.
Mm,
And I think that with Akane, to see her papa even on social media one day when she has it, which I dread the day that that will come,
yeah, me
but
too.
she will. Yeah, she will one day. And when she sees my Instagram and my social media, she will see nothing but inspiration and nothing
Mm,
but purpose and intention. Um, that's really, really important to me. And this sense of leaving something behind, in this sense of legacy, like I've never ever been so present to time passing, because every time I see her is a reminder of that. And it's really interesting because I have like a candle burning on each end. My mom is 78 years old, who I'm extremely close with, and I have my daughter who's 10, and I'm seeing time is kind of like pushing in on me from each end, because I'm seeing my mom getting older and my daughter getting older, but from a very different angle. And I'm like, I can't waste a single minute of my life. Like, I
mm,
cannot spend a single minute of my life that's misspent, because this is real. And I'm either missing out on my daughter or I'm missing out on my mom. And that's been incredible. That's been like a ridiculous, like super thruster on a rocket going into space, like full power. This is your energy, and this is what your fuel is. And it's been beautiful. And the greatest overview effect moment that I had was when my daughter was born, and you know intellectually understanding what love is. And Kafir
mm.
and I always talk about this because his son was born 4 months after 4 months or after Akane.
Wow.
And we always talk about this, like we understood what love is, but we didn't feel it the way
Mm-hmm.
you feel it, as you know. And that can be applied to most things that are significant in our life experience, right? In these moments
Mm,
of wow, there's no way I could ever unsee this, and there's no way that I can continue to operate in the same way once I have this knowledge. That's the overview effect. 1000%.
mm,
An astronaut goes into space, they look down on Earth and they don't see borders. They see a beautiful, beautiful blue marble. They put it into the context of an infinite universe or universes, and you're like, you're cognitively everything. You're not the same person. It's impossible.
mm,
It's impossible to be the same person. That's why they come back. Astronauts come back and they become environmentalists. They become artists, poets, painters, musicians. They change. They stop being pilots or being in a technical world to be in a philosophical world, and it's like in a spiritual world. This happens all the time. And ultimately, my goal as a father is to create a life for myself that lives and breathes the overview effect, and everything that I do is to evoke the overview effect on others, particularly music. This is like a world that I am so excited to also see unravel, is how far I can take this overview effect concept with my music and with bringing people together and having this overview experience of Earth, but then zooming in and seeing
mm.
that you don't have to go to space. You never have to go to space to experience the power of this planet. It's right underneath our feet.
Mhm.
And that's my mantra, really.
Wow, man, that was incredible. Thanks for sharing that. There's something you said, definitely a few key points, but something that I've never really thought about, something like about sharing that specific value. And now that I'm getting to know you a little more, I can definitely tell that it's important for you. But I don't even know if I'm going to say it right. Uh, Uncorruptible, is that what you said? Like
Yeah,
uncorruptible? Yeah, and
yeah.
it's a detailed point that you said, but for me, like, that for me that's super powerful because it seemed like that's through even throughout your chapter in Habitas, it still corrupt you like that essence just like blew like bloom in a 3.0, which is wonderful now versus getting kind of corrupted and sucked into that world and trying giving that to your daughter. I think it's great. So I'm definitely gonna keep that in a golden nugget of mine. I have one more question for Eduardo, and then we'll jump into a little lighter segment of the podcast because it's a rapid question. But last question is, if you could, I don't even know what's your age today, but if you could have a conversation with your younger self, okay, like your 18-year-old Eduardo, I think you were probably living in Miami back then. If you have one solid advice you could give him with everything that you've lived in the last years, what would that be?
It would be to, and this is cliche, but it's true. It would be to not do anything that that isn't aligned with what makes you the happiest to wake up
Mm,
to.
beautiful.
And music is 1000%, a million infinite percent has been that for me. Every single business transaction, every single life change, every single a, a crucial moment in my life has happened 1000%. I mean, like I can show it on a piece of paper, like, or on a calendar and a timeline, that my decision based on music, and not the music I listen to or what I'm playing, based on like how important music is for me in my life, is a direct it's directly correlated to the outcome of that moment in my life.
Mm,
And that happened because I think at an early age, at that person, that 18-year-old that I would address, my younger self, I would say, don't ever lose sight of that, because when everything's gone, which can happen,
hmm
in the very least, you have what makes you happy, and there are many things that make us unhappy, and happiness is a choice. It's crazy how, you know it's incredible how this is truly the way it is. Like happiness, you have things that are completely out of your control, and you decide whether or not you turn it into something negative or positive. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
And you can be that fisherman on a coast, fishing on your own, eating your own meals, serving your family with very little to show for in terms of a material wealth, and be extremely happy. So if
Mm,
you suddenly have all this material wealth and you suddenly find yourself without it, but you're doing something that is is you couldn't live without, it's like oxygen,
hmm
then you'll be okay. I truly believe that.
mm. Man, that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. All right, Eduardo, let's finish off with some questions, okay? Pretty simple. First intuitive answer that comes up, and then we'll call it a day. Here we go. All right. What's your favorite instrument to play right now?
The piano.
Piano.
Yeah.
One sound,
Actually,
one.
to be
Yeah, go ahead.
to be specific,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
particular synthesizer.
Okay.
It's called the Moog Subsequent 37. It is like it's incredible.
Awesome. I
It's
love
like
that.
this
That's specific.
it's like this technical thing that happens electrically that's inside its circuitry, its physics, and suddenly it turns into this expression of like my soul. It's like the fusion of the two worlds is
Amazing. I think anyone who is technical and knows exactly that. I don't know how many people will listen to this and know what that is, but for those who know, I'm sure they appreciate it. One sound that always bring you, one sound that always brings you peace.
my daughter's laugh.
Mm. Oh, I'm gonna get emotional. Um, sorry. A morning or a night creative session, like music wise.
What's the question?
Like a more
I'm not sure I
like in the studio. Let's say you can do like a
uh-huh.
studio creative session. Would it be more in the morning or in the evenings?
I see.
Yeah.
Um, it can be both. It can be both. I can be extremely creative in the morning, and I can be. It depends on like what that day looks like. Yeah, it can be both. It can be, and both is powerful.
A ritual
I
or
guess no.
go ahead.
Maybe I'll say at night because I have no distraction.
Mm.
Yeah,
A ritual or a habit you always do before going on stage.
find a vantage point
Vantage point.
that I can. Yeah, like a
Okay.
point visual of like maybe it's like if you remember in Habitas Tulum, there was a second floor to the restaurant, and a lot of times I would sit in that restaurant and look below, or hide in behind like a bunch of palms and watch the room fill and see people's excitement to what they're about to witness and be part of. To me is like a drug. It's
Really?
like wow. It's like I try to do that in any venue that I perform in. Try to find a place where nobody can see me, but I can see what's happening, because I am so unbelievably grateful, Eryck, for anybody who has set time aside for me. Thank you for having me on your podcast and putting your valuable time aside to speak to me and allow me the opportunity to share whatever's in my heart, whatever's in my mind. When I get to see that before I perform, it is like rocket fuel for me, because it's like, this is why this happens. This is the reason why I do
Mm.
what I do. And it's incredible. It's beautiful. And it's like, imagine jumping on stage with that level of gratitude for what's about to happen. It hasn't even happened yet,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. Wow.
It's so powerful.
Wow. Just connecting with that why before each show. Wow. That's great. I've never heard, I have a few artist friends and I've never heard about that specific way of starting a show. Is there a country or a place that most inspires your creativity recently?
Morocco.
Really?
Yeah. Morocco for sure. And I'm, Venezuela, by nature is an incredibly inspiring place for me. And probably one of the most beautiful countries I've been to. You know, that's kind of biased from Venezuelan, but it's true. But Morocco is so raw, so raw. You know, it's like, and I haven't been to India yet. And Roberta tells me that when I go to India, I'm going to be profoundly affected by my visit to India.
Mm,
But Morocco's rawness and Morocco's warmth and Morocco's just hardcoreness is really inspiring. Really, the
mm,
colors, the textures, the sounds, the chaos. It's incredible.
amazing. Morocco. Analog gear or digital setup?
Both, both.
Both.
I definitely embrace technology for sure.
The most memorable live show you've ever played?
Wow, that's tough, man. Um,
Probably.
I think the most memorable live shows that I play are when, I don't know that there's one specifically. There's too many, but what I know of those too many shows, the most significant ones are the ones where I end the song and there's silence because we none of us know how to react. Those are the most memorable shows when people are so present, and when I bring the music down and I bring that energy down and I take it to a place and suddenly there's silence, and you can hear a pin drop in the room, and I see people, as you remember, people are around me, is
Mm-hmm.
360-degree audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I look around in those moments when I've sort of been able to kind of open my eyes after that silence, and I open my eyes and I look around and I see people looking at each other in this state of wonder. And it's not to credit what I do, it's to credit the presence, the communal presence. That's the
Mm,
power there. It's
mm-hmm.
not like, wow, that melody and that jam and that, it's not that. It's the being able communally to capture a moment in time where everybody was aligned. That is that's that's everything. And that's the reason why I like, you know, when that happens, which I'm happy to say happens a lot, um, those are the moments that I'm like, this is unbelievable. And
Mm,
I am shocked and surprised at it every single time, at the
mm.
power of it.
That's amazing. Wow. This is off script question, but 150 like people crowd or 10,000 people crowd
That's a
for a
really
show?
great question because that's always something that I struggle with.
Really?
And yeah, because 150 people, that is a magic number, and it's like
Yeah.
scientifically proven. You know, it's like
Really?
120 to 150 people is when you can capture many of the senses of the people in the space:
Mm,
hearing, emotional, spiritual, scent, sight, sounds, like very, very, like, profoundly encompassing. Um, but it's only those 150 people.
mm,
So if you have to sacrifice a little bit of that to hit 10,000 people with a message, when you have an audience, like for me, like concerts can't just be entertainment. Now I have a captive audience, and there's like a rapture of like an enveloping of emotion. The moment I have that emotional context and that emotion and that captivity of emotion, there has to be a call to action.
mm,
Whether it's immediate call to action in the space where it's like, turn to the person next to you and hug them and let them know you're happy, you're here with them, even if they're a stranger. Like, even if it's that call to action, or I set up, which I do often in the visual aspect of my shows, I set up QR codes and I talk about this foundation that we support, and suddenly I have you're captive emotionally, and I say, wouldn't it be incredible if we all took part in helping this foundation do their incredible work? Boom, QR codes on screen, pull your phones out, let's make that happen. Like, That is powerful. And
Mm,
that's, if I could do that at 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, imagine the impact. And
mm,
this is a dream of mine that I hope to realize one day, is to really kind of disrupt the live concert industry in that way,
mm-hmm,
where suddenly, all of a sudden, every single show has this immediate connection to impact, where Beyonce's at a stadium with 50,000 people, or at Coachella for 140,000 people, and there's QR codes, and 1% of that audience photographs that QR code, hits the donate link, immediate impact.
mm,
That's my dream. That's my dream.
mm. Amazing. Let's keep going. A song or artist that's been on repeat lately. Lately, a song or an
Lately,
artist. Yeah.
uh, on the classical side, there's the composer named Arvo Pärt, who's an Estonian composer, who's like, you know, really someone. He's 90 years old this year, and he is an alien from another planet. He's an angel. Like, this guy, this gentleman is really incredible. I recommend everybody. ARVO PART with an umlaut, two dots on the A. And two, I'm always listening to Peter Gabriel. He's somebody who I always
Really?
go back to. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Peter Gabriel, from his music to his he's a technologist, he's a futurist, he's a humanitarian. He's a true idol of mine in every sense. So I always reference his music, like all of his music. There's two guys that I listen to a lot recently, that I've become friends with. I've sought them out, and I've become friends with. One is Didacte, Didacte, incredible electronic music producer, all heart and soul. And there's another one called Holloway,
I love
Holloway.
Holloway. Yeah.
Benny is his name, for anybody who doesn't know him. Uh, we've started to build a really beautiful relationship. These two guys do unbelievable music. They're really special. So yeah, those are I listen to their music a lot for many reasons.
Mm, I love that. I'm gonna go research the one that I don't know. By the way, some of your music is in our daily life whole since I've came to your show. It's on. I think yours. I think the song specifically "Love" was my top 5 songs on Spotify, and I listen to music every day, all day. So it was kind of on repeat at one point. I started my yoga classes with it. Yeah, so you're definitely
Thank you,
part
brother.
of. Not for real. You're really
Thank you for
part
that.
of our daily life track. All right, let's keep going. The first thing you do when you actually wake up, like for yourself. This is more like morning routine.
Uh, I try to exercise. I
Yeah.
try to really try to figure out a way where that shouldn't be interrupted, and I spend, if it's 10 minutes, just really kind of getting into my body.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, I have these beautiful breakfasts with Roberta that sort of set the tone. Sometimes we play backgammon while we have breakfast, and we talk
Yeah.
about, they're
I
really
love that
special. They're
ritual.
really special. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're really special.
We do a brunch, like Dominic and I, we will sit down, have a really good, healthy brunch and play chess, which is kind of your backgammon. And it's just a moment with us. And then we'll have some jazz, like, or piano playing in the back. And it's just a way to be together. We're not really always speaking, but we're just in this moment, and we're quite competitive as well. So we challenge ourselves with the
Yeah, I
chat.
understand. I get that. And the issue with starting your day with that is that you can actually just do that for the rest of the day.
You can,
That's
yeah.
like,
It can,
yeah,
yeah.
how do we pull away?
Yeah.
How do we pull away? And usually we pull away from it because one of us is upset that we've lost so much, and we're like, okay, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Yeah,
We
no,
actually
it's a
have
beautiful.
we actually have like a Google, believe it or not, a Google sheet. We started to play, I think, in 2017, and we have all our tracks of win, loss, and stalemate since
Wow.
2017, and
Yeah.
we stack them up. So yeah, and the winner, like we have her. rituals. If you win the month, if you lose the month, you have like consequences. But we take our chess
That's a good idea.
quite
That's a good
seriously. Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Um,
I'm gonna put that into effect with Roberta. Who takes care of this at the end of the month, or who
yeah,
treats us to this at the end of the month?
yeah.
That's awesome.
It's mostly like a
I love it.
dishes, dishes or like dinner. Um, if you could collaborate with an artist, past or present, who would it be?
Mm. Prince would be one, although his music is completely in another spectrum of mine. But his his I he he's one of the most insane performers I've ever seen in my life. And for sure, Peter Gabriel. That is. I have a crazy Peter Gabriel story too. It's like that moment that might have happened where my world just somehow collided with his. Um, but he would be one. He would be one for sure.
But my dad is one of my biggest musical. Like he just, I don't say like inspiration, but he's the one who was just listening to music all day, all night until 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. Good sound system at home, and all these discs. And Peter Gabriel was one. A lot of those soundtrack was played when I was younger.
Beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful.
and yeah, so I definitely resonate with that when you talk about him. I would love to hear that story one day about him.
It's so good.
That you want to share it now, or is it a good time, or do you have
Sure. Yeah,
time?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, no, no. I'll share the
we're
story.
in
It's
it.
so good. So I'm playing a sunset at that event in Nomade for our first Habitas Tulum event, and I'm playing a sunset, and I have this what I think is an amazing remix of one of his songs, like, and it's one of his like more kind of obscure soundtrack songs,
What's the
and I'm
song?
playing this. It's called oh my god, now I'm blanking. I'll send it to you.
Okay, it's fine.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
no
don't want to
worries.
waste time on
Yeah,
remember.
that's
I can't
it's
believe
all
I don't
good.
remember the name.
It's all
Yeah,
good.
you
It
know, like
happens.
when you're like, oh yeah, I
Yeah.
love him. He's my dear brother, and he's like, really, what's his name? And you're like, oh my god, how do I not remember
Yeah,
his name?
I know.
I'll send it to you. Beautiful, like ethereal dance track, but like where you like close your eyes and you dance kind of thing, right? And I'm playing it at sunset, and this newfound friend of mine who's at the event, who from London, who flew to Tulum for the event, comes up to me and he's like, "This is Peter Gabriel," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's Peter Gabriel." And he's like, "Has he heard it?" And I'm like, "No, Charlie, of course not." It's like I don't know. It's like it would be even illegal to have to release this. Like this is a bootleg version of a remix of it. And he's like, "No, he needs to hear it." And I'm like, "Haha, go dance." And he goes and he's like, "All right, cool." And then he goes and he's dancing and we're having a beautiful time. And then the event ends. He goes back to London, and a week later, I get an email with Peter Gabriel on CC, and he says, "Pete, please meet Eduardo. I just spent a week with him in Tulum. He's doing this amazing thing. Check it out, Habitas." And he shares the link with him, and he's like, "Peter, he remixed one of your songs, and it's like you need to listen to it. I think you really like it. It's a really interesting version of that song." I'm like, I get what's going on here. I'm in an email thread with Peter Gabriel. It took me like 2 weeks to think of that reply, right? Like
Really?
to really like this is cannot be a missed opportunity. And I write this beautiful email in gratitude of everything that he has done in his career that has shaped my life in difficult moments, in times where I needed that music to bring me out of questioning and out of like angst and of all those times that I was happy and I played that music to fulfill that soundtrack of happiness. Went on and on about this, right? And then I say, and as a token of gratitude, I'd love to invite you to our next event in Turkey. We have Charlie. Charlie will be there, and I would love for you to to be part of that. I have a call very soon, so I'm going to make this
It's all
quick.
good.
I'd love for you to be a part of that. Here is the song that Charlie is referring to, and it was the link was like eduardocastillo.com/ share music / new release, something like that, right? I send it to him. He replies within 3 days. He's like, "Hi, Eduardo, nice to meet you." I'm like, "No way. I can't believe this is happening. This is so incredible. Wow, Charlie, I love you." And I'm in that moment, and he's like, "Thank you so much for the beautiful email. Very grateful for the email and the words. Total gentleman, as expected." And he says, "I clicked on the link you sent me, but I'm not sure that that's what you meant to send." And I'm like, "What? What?" I'm like in panic, right? I'm panicked. And I click on the link, and the link takes you to a Turkish escort service.
Why
Check
did
this
you have
out.
that?
Check this out. And I'm like, wait a second. I just invited him to our event in Turkey, and suddenly the song that I'm supposed to send him, the link takes him to an escort service. Immediately called GoDaddy or whoever was hosting my website at the time. And I'm like, what's happening here? And they're like, oh, you're hacked. You've been hacked.
Oh,
But what are the chances of that happening?
oh.
Unbelievable. Charlie, a year later, invites me. I write back and I'm like, Peter, I'm so embarrassed. I even sent him screenshots of my conversation with GoDaddy,
Yeah.
saying like, this is what happened. He writes back and he's like, that's hilarious. What are the chances, right? And whatever. We have a little bit of a conversation and it's over. A year later, Charlie invites me to London to one of his events. He does this incredible event called CogX, which is like the most insane AI conference in the world. Even before AI was a thing, he's been at it and it's incredible. I highly recommend it. And I go and I see him and he says, "Hey, are you leaving London soon? Because in a few days, there's this other thing that I want you to come to. And guess who's going to be there? Peter. Perfect opportunity for you to talk to him." And I'm like, okay, amazing. I get to meet Peter in person. And I go to that thing and I see Peter Gabriel and he's like, Charlie's running around. I'm not waiting for him to introduce me. And I see him. He's like reading a pamphlet or something. And I go, it was an incredible conference. David Attenborough did a keynote speak. It was incredible. And I go to Peter and I say, Peter, you might not remember me, but we messaged. Charlie introduced us, this song. And he's like, Turkish prostitutes.
There you go.
Yes, that's me. That was our meeting, and like he would have forgotten. It wouldn't. It worked out. It worked out.
That's a good story.
Not that I'm supporting prostitution whatsoever. But that's what happened. It was incredible, and
That's a good story.
we had that's sort of my introduction to Peter Gabriel in the flesh. It was awesome.
That's a great story, man. Eduardo, thank you so much, man. I know you have to run. We've been having a great conversation. I really appreciate your time and energy. You spoke some gratitude words to myself. I wanted to give them right back to you. You could have be doing pretty much anything else in the world. You decided to be here. I felt you were really present and also shared a lot of valuable wisdom. I hope that anyone who listened to this podcast enjoyed it. For those who want to maybe follow you or follow your story, your socials, your website, do you mind just dropping real quick your handles here if they want to?
Yeah, of course.
Find you,
EduardoCastillo.com and my Instagram is Eduardo Castillo with 3 L's, not 2. There's a lot of Eduardo Castillos with 2 L's.
Okay.
I added an extra L, so it worked.
Beautiful. So guys, there you have it. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. It was really a pleasure. Eduardo, let's stay in touch. I know you have a call, but we'd love to keep this relationship and connection open.
Thank you for the time, man. Thank you for the time. I enjoyed it very much.
Amazing. Thank you, brother.
Take care, brother.
See ya. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to follow the show and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us to grow and keep the conversation going. Thanks for listening.